The Philippines. For decades, this island nation was dismissed as a small player in Asia. Too small to matter, too poor to compete, too weak to stand against giants. But today, everything has changed. Behind closed doors in Washington, Pentagon officials and US Admirals are sounding the alarm. Not because the Philippines is a threat, but because it has quietly become one of the most decisive players in Asia's geopolitical chessboard. And the world is finally starting to notice. Let's start with geography. If you pull up a map of Asia and look at the South China Sea, one thing becomes immediately clear. The Philippines sits at the very center of one of the world's busiest and most contested waterways. Every year, over $3 trillion worth of global trade passes through these waters. Oil tankers, container ships, fishing fleets, all of it flows through sea lanes that cut directly across Philippine territory. For the US military, this makes the Philippines a natural outpost, a watchtower that overlooks both China's doorstep and America's supply lines to its Asian allies. This is why the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or EDCA, signed between Manila and Washington, has become such a game-changer. It allows US forces to rotate troops and build facilities inside the Philippines, creating a forward base network unlike any other in the region. In plain words, if conflict ever breaks out, the Philippines is not just involved, it is the pivot point. For years, US defense planners focused heavily on Japan, South Korea, and Guam as their main anchors in Asia. But recently, leaked defense briefings and open statements from US admirals reveal a growing truth. Without the Philippines, America's ability to project power in the South China Sea collapses. Admiral John Aquilino, head of US Indo-Pacific Command, has openly praised the Philippines as absolutely critical to regional stability. Other defense officials describe the archipelago as America's unsinkable aircraft carrier, a place where runways, ports, and bases can extend US reach by thousands of miles. This isn't just theory. In 2023, the US gained access to 4 new military sites across Luzon, Palawan, and northern Philippines. That means American aircraft and ships can now operate closer to Taiwan and the contested Spratly Islands than ever before. For Beijing, this was a shock. For Washington, it was a relief. For the Pentagon, it confirmed what many had quietly believed all along. The Philippines is the key. Of course, none of this happens in a vacuum. China's rise has transformed Asia. Its navy is now the largest in the world, with hundreds of warships patrolling the South China Sea. Its artificial islands bristle with missile batteries and radar towers. Its fishing fleets double as maritime militias. But here's the catch. Despite its massive navy, China still depends heavily on shipping lanes that pass through waters claimed by the Philippines. That's a vulnerability no missile can erase. By aligning more closely with the United States, the Philippines has essentially placed itself at the crossroads of China's most vital trade routes. It's a subtle but powerful move, one that makes Beijing nervous, and Pentagon strategists quietly optimistic. What makes this even more remarkable is how fast perceptions have shifted. Not long ago, many analysts dismissed the Philippines as the weak link in the US alliance network. The military was underfunded, equipment was outdated, and politics often wavered between Washington and Beijing. But in the last 5 years, things have changed dramatically. The Philippines has invested in modernizing its armed forces, purchasing new frigates, aircraft, and missile systems. The Coast Guard has stepped up patrols in the West Philippine Sea. Filipino fishermen, once intimidated by Chinese vessels, are now escorted back into contested waters with national support. And most importantly, the people themselves have rallied around defending sovereignty. Surveys show Filipinos have some of the strongest anti-China sentiment in Asia, and some of the highest trust in the United States. That public opinion matters. It gives the government political cover to stand firm, and it signals to Washington that the alliance has real popular backing. But here's the twist. This isn't just about warships and strategy. Pentagon officials know that true power isn't measured by guns alone. It's also about economics. And in this arena, the Philippines is making waves. With a population of over 115 million, a young workforce, and a booming service sector, the Philippines is now one of the fastest-growing economies in Asia. Business Process Outsourcing, or BPO, has turned Manila and Cebu into global call center capitals. Remittances from millions of overseas Filipino workers pump billions into the economy every year. Tourism is rebounding, and digital startups are flourishing. Even Singapore, long considered Southeast Asia's financial hub, has begun to quietly acknowledge the competitive rise of Filipino talent. For US strategists, this is a reminder that the Philippines is not just a security partner but also an economic one. So why are US admirals, battle-hardened men and women who think in terms of ships and submarines, suddenly so focused on the Philippines? Because they understand something simple. In modern geopolitics, alliances decide outcomes. A war in Asia will not be won by one country alone. It will depend on who stands where and how firmly. And the Philippines, with its geography, its growing economy, and its people's will, is no longer a secondary player. It is the front line. Some analysts call this shift the Marcos Doctrine. Under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the Philippines has taken a more assertive stance, aligning with the US, strengthening ties with Japan and Australia, and even welcoming new defense cooperation with Europe. This doesn't mean Manila is looking for conflict, far from it. The strategy is to deter aggression by building a web of alliances so strong that no rival dares to challenge it. It's a quiet diplomacy, not about loud threats but about positioning. And it's working. So where does this leave us? The Philippines is not suddenly becoming a superpower it doesn't need to. What it is becoming is far more important, a hinge, a pivot, the place where the balance of power in Asia tilts one way or the other. For US admirals, that realization carries both urgency and respect. Urgency, because any miscalculation in the South China Sea could spiral into conflict. Respect, because the Philippines has proven that even a smaller nation can change the game when it knows its value. So the next time you hear someone dismiss the Philippines as just another island nation, remember this. The Pentagon doesn't see it that way, the US Navy doesn't see it that way, and China certainly doesn't see it that way. The Philippines has gone from overlooked to indispensable. And that, more than any headline or soundbite, explains why US admirals now admit the Philippines holds the key to Asia's future.